And welcome to Digital Influence. My name is Dallas McMillan. Today I am speaking to Tony Hughes, who is known as one of Australasia's leading sales influencers. He's been involved in selling for many years, but has recently transformed his visibility in his industry by working on his personal brand. And because that's something we talk a lot about, and Tony's such a great case study, he's agreed to come on the show and talk about how he's used online media and blogging on LinkedIn and other strategies to build his brand and the way it's impacted his career. So Tony, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thanks, Dallas. Really good to be with you, and I'm a fan of your show that you run.
Terrific. Well, let's get started just by talking a little bit about your background, what you do and how you got into this industry, and then later we'll talk about how your career trajectory has changed by getting really serious about building your online profile.
Yeah, Dallas, and I know that your core market is really consultants that are out there as entrepreneurs trying to drive their own business. They really need to be a jack of all trades, so they're delivering consulting and services to clients. And as well as that, they obviously need in their spare time to build their own brand and obviously market and sell. Up until 3 years ago, I had a career spanning about 3 decades. I've owned my own companies here in Australia and the USA. For about the last 12 years before I went out on my own 3 years ago, I had various managing director roles running the Asia Pacific region for technology companies out of North America. And 3 years ago, I decided to pursue my dream and go out on my own doing consulting. I'd published a book already that was a business bestseller, and I'd developed some IP. So my first piece of advice to people is you need to create some collateral that gives you credibility. You need some IP or frameworks or tools that you can go and build consulting around as a way of creating some leverage with your time and differentiating yourself. So I'd already done the hard work of creating those things, and I decided to punch the button on going out as a consultant on my own. And about 18 months ago, I decided to get very serious about using social media to build my personal brand. Up until that time, I'd been, like I guess a lot of people, very skeptical about social media. I basically regard it as narcissistic blasting and spamming that most people engage in, and I was just incredibly time poor. So I thought, who really has the time to do all of this activity in social, and is there anybody really listening? I'm going to talk a little bit today also about this book by David Meerman Scott. He was in Australia speaking for LinkedIn just last week, but it's a brilliant book, and that really informed my strategy for building so far in 18 months about 65,000 followers of my blog inside LinkedIn. We can maybe talk a little bit later about why I blog on the LinkedIn platform rather than on my own website, but yeah, that's really my background.
Fantastic. And David Meerman Scott's book is certainly a well-regarded tome, and I've read other books by people who have similarly been triggered with a career change or rethinking how they run their business as a result of reading that book over the last 5 years or so. So what was it that made you think, look, now it's time to take social media seriously? Was there a particular event, or was it just curiosity? What made you change from a skeptic to thinking it'd be a great idea to get into that?
Well, the thing that actually happened for me is I was mentoring a client based in the USA. They'd found my book online and read it, and then they came and found me on my website. And I was mentoring them once every 2 weeks via Skype. And this person actually said to me, that they loved my content and my IP, but they said, in America, no one's really heard of you, and your content is better than anything else that they'd read, was their opinion. And they said, why aren't you busy in social? So I gave them all the standard excuses that people have. And to cut a long story short, that person convinced me that I needed to get active in social to really attract and engage a marketplace. I'm working on a number of follow-up books, and I'm wanting to get a contract with a New York book publisher. And the reality of book publishing today is that it's been dramatically disrupted by ebooks and audio books. A lot of bookstores are just going out of business. The business model and the margins in traditional books has really changed. And the reality is that publishers are only interested in authors if they bring a big audience platform with them. There's a guy called Michael Hyatt who's written a lot about this. He published an excellent book called Platform. But basically, any author needs to build a big platform of followers so that when a publisher publishes a book, they know that there's going to be a lot of pull for the product in the marketplace. So because I wanted to get a book publishing contract, I realized I need to build big audience following. And just having good content isn't enough. We need to go out and actually build an audience and engage with an audience. So that was when I decided to adopt a pay it forward strategy and just give my intellectual property away and start to blog and publish basically everything that I know and really build following. So I wanted to move away from an interrupt and push kind of model of trying to sell and do business development, and instead move to an attract and engage model through publishing on social platforms.
Fantastic. And look, absolutely, that's the approach I suggest as well. So it's great to have you echoing those sentiments. I wanted to just pick up a little bit on the book publishing thing, because I have a lot of friends who've published books. A lot of them have self-published, and traditionally people perceive that the publisher was going to do the promotion work for you. But the reality is, even with quite successful authors, a lot of that burden rests on the author in terms of building a following and promoting the book. And they, even if you've got a paid publishing gig with a major publisher, there's a huge amount of legwork required on behalf of the author. So the benefits of having a publisher, a traditional publisher, rather than self-publishing, are often overstated. Was your book published through a publisher or self-published?
So I actually chose to self-publish, not because I couldn't get a publisher, but I wanted a long tail of sales. What a lot of people that are writing books don't realize is that if you go to a publisher, you basically sign away your IP rights. And the stats on book publishing are rather terrifying. There's about 1 million English language books published in the world every year. And 95% of those books fail to sell even 500 copies. Now, it's impossible to make money on a book unless you sell at least 500 copies. So what that says is the failure rate is extremely high, and where book publishing has changed is very similar in the way that the music industry has changed. It's not enough today for a band or an artist to get signed by a record label. Those artists and bands have got to go and build big following. The money's actually moved away from selling records, CDs, or music on iTunes now, where the big money is actually in concerts. So the whole music industry has really done a whole 360, where bands have got to build huge following, working hard, getting on the road, doing concerts, and that's what will create the pull through of sales for their online music. And instead of selling albums now, obviously it's individual songs, and it's massively competitive. So the book industry is very similar. So I chose to self-publish so that I didn't sign away my rights to the book. What happens to most books that get published by a publishing house is 99% of them fail to ever get to a second printing or additional printings. And the stock that goes to bookshops is in essence on consignment. Although the bookshops are invoiced for the books, they can return them with a restocking fee. So it's basically consignment stock. They have about a 5-month life in a bookshop. And then what typically happens is a lot of those books just get pulped. And the author that signed away their rights to the publisher has to buy their own product back, or they just can't get it in the future. So what I chose to do was to self-publish and do a good job at marketing and promotion. I found a book distributor, and I managed, which is really rare for an independently published book, I managed to get my book into airport lounges in Asia Pacific. So I found a distributor who had relationships with the bookshops that are in airports. So I sort of had a hybrid model of self-publish but find a distributor. For these downstream books, now that I've built a big audience following, the truth is I'm not wanting the hassle of self-publishing. So I'm going to go with a publisher for that reason.
Wow, there's some fantastic tips in there. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure people are interested in those details if they're looking at writing a book. One thing I've noticed is that while people are often skeptical about social media and will it work for business, what I think you just can't afford to miss is that social media is just such a perfect case study of what happens when these peer-to-peer technologies and sort of changing social expectations infiltrating the industry. So it's happened to the media industry. We've just talked about books and music, and of course movies are going down the same path. But I think it's really important for anyone in any industry, and obviously professional services is the space I talk about, and which you'll be familiar with as well, that they see that this sort of disruption is inevitable when you meet the criteria of having sufficiently low friction technology and social interactions that allow these things to happen. They just happen almost by themselves. So as barriers to entry or monopolies are eroded by technology and globalization, this is sweeping through lots of industries. So I love looking at social media, not just as a tool, but as a case study of what happens to an industry that thinks, oh, look, no one will ever stop going to the bookstore or going to the movie theatre.
Yeah, I mean, many industries are being disrupted, but professions themselves are being disrupted. There's a father and son published a book. It's in my bookshelf behind me. I won't turn around and try and find it, but it's called The Professions, and the surname of the father and son is Suskind, Suskind. But they've written about how technology is disrupting professions, and the reality is that every single profession is subject to disruption. The people that will survive and prosper are the ones that get very good at embracing technology. So if you as a professional can have your knowledge and insights, but work with technology to improve your efficiency and the reach and the power of your network, that's when you have a really good positive future. But if you don't embrace technology, the danger is you just be put out of business. And as an example of this, if you have a look, for example, in the legal profession, a lot of what lawyers have done traditionally to make money is, for example, have a look at precedents. So a client would typically go to a lawyer and say, I've got this particular issue with a partner or an employee or a client. They're threatening to sue me. Should I fight it? Should I settle? And what the law firm would do is go away and have a look at precedent and come back with an opinion about the likelihood of success if they decided to fight, and give them an estimate on what would be involved. Well, typically now there's search engines that automate that process of doing discovery and precedents. Even things in mergers and acquisitions where law firms would set up a deal room and they would go and do due diligence on all of the contracts that are in place with the company being acquired, so that the acquiring company could assess risk in contracts. Increasingly now that's all being digitized, and that process is being automated and offshored to lower cost labor markets, to typically places like in the Philippines, where that work can be done at far lower costs. So when you have a look at globalization and the dismantling of trade borders between countries and lower cost job markets, and when you add to that the issue of technology being able to automate a lot of processes, that's why a lot of professions are really at risk.
Absolutely. And anyone out there thinking, well, look, it's not happening here, so it won't happen to me, I think that the risk is actually the longer it takes to hit you, the harder it's going to hit. And things like banking in the legal profession, anywhere where you've had a monopoly which was imposed by legislation or by barriers to entry in terms of qualification, it delays that process. But then when it hits, those ivory towers are a long way to fall from.
Yeah, that's very true. And you work with the professional services industry, and I've got some clients in that arena, but I mainly specialize in working with salespeople. And Forrester Research in the USA, with one of their analysts, a gentleman called Andy Hoare, did some research last year, and they believe that within 4 years, 22%, it equates to more than 1 million people in the USA, but 22% of business-to-business salespeople won't have roles anymore. And the reason is, as everything drifts toward becoming a commodity, where buyers are empowered and it's easy for them to jump online and do their homework, they're not looking for just relationships with people. They're not bored and lonely looking for a new friend. And they don't typically need salespeople either just to provide information. They can find that online. So a lot of salespeople are just going to fail to create the level of value that's needed to fund their roles. And employers are going to move increasingly to inside sales models, and they're going to think long and hard about how they can create great sales experience, both with mobile apps and technology and online, and also content to attract and engage people much earlier in their buyer's journey as they're evaluating the market. They're going to look at those things as a way of differentiating and creating sales, rather than just throwing money at expensive field salespeople. So salespeople are being disrupted as well.
For sure. So you've probably seen this coming, having read the new rules of PR and marketing. So obviously you thought social media and building your online profile was some sort of hedge against you're becoming redundant. How does it help having a great profile and being seen as an expert in your field?
Well, having a great online presence is really important. And the reason it is people have always done business with those that they know, like, and trust. The quality of a person's network has always been important as they go and seek to derive business. We all know that cold calling is both brutal and also depressing. Cold calling stats are very sobering. So the success rate of just jumping on the phone and cold calling to try and generate business is currently tracking at about 2.6%, and it's getting worse every year. So it's fairly low productivity. Any professional really wants to help people, but this whole idea of interrupting someone and trying to push your message at them is really quite difficult. So the reason an online brand is important is really for a couple of reasons. Yes, we want to put content out there that attracts and engages people, but there's a more important reason, and it's this: 75% of the time, anyone who's considering doing business with us is going to check us out online before they choose to return that phone call or take the meeting, or before they see us face to face. So 3/4 of the time they're going to look online. And the question is, what do people see when they find us? Do they see a credible person of genuine insight and great values that's worth meeting with? Or do they see someone that's really too low a caliber? And that's why having a strong digital presence is really important. Most people make the mistake of treating their LinkedIn profile as an online CV. We need to instead treat LinkedIn as a personal branding microsite. About 85 to 90% of the white-collar professionals in Australia, for example, have got LinkedIn profiles. There's about 430 million members of LinkedIn worldwide. There's 2 people join a second. And if you search, if you Google anybody's name online, often their LinkedIn profile is the first thing that comes up. So the first thing I recommend to people is go and look at your LinkedIn profile very critically and think about it in terms of a personal branding microsite. So you want to have a business-friendly headshot photo there. You don't have a glamour photo or an old photo of when you're at a wedding or something. You don't have a macho photo if you're a male. You don't have a photo of you riding a motorbike or something. It's business friendly, so smiling and well lit and in focus. You want to have a headline. Most people treat the headline as their job description or their title, but you want to have a headline that speaks to the value that you provide people. You want to make sure your contact details are accurate. You want to customize your LinkedIn URL so you can put that in all of your email signatures and on your business card. And then you want to make sure you fill in the summary panel inside LinkedIn. And in that summary panel, you don't put your work history, but you basically talk about the value that you offer those you serve. So if you're an employee, you talk about the value you'd offer an employer. But if you're an entrepreneur or professional services person, a professional that's engaging clients directly, you talk about the value you offer your clients. And in the first paragraph, and in the second paragraph, you talk about the values by which you operate. And then the next thing I recommend to people is they then need to publish at least 2 or 3 posts. So there's 2 ways of publishing content in LinkedIn. You can publish updates, which is a great way of working with other people's content, but you can also publish your own article. And what you need to think about is, what are the insights that you have that you could offer people? Or what are the common objections that you would get from people in trying to do business with them? And then write something that's positively opposite to that, because I really believe that the smartest people proactively deal with objections before they ever come up, rather than trying to deal with them at the time. So publishing content is a way of really setting an agenda around the business value that you offer, the values by which you operate, and why a conversation with you should matter to your market. So in essence, what you're doing there is you're setting the agenda before you meet with the person. So, and I encourage people, if you get an appointment with somebody, email them to confirm the meeting and encourage them to go and have a look at a particular post within your LinkedIn profile, or to have a look at your LinkedIn profile in advance of meeting. And if you do all of this well, what it means is when you turn up for that face-to-face meeting or you have that phone call, you've earned the right already to just focus on them and their needs and what's going on in their world, rather than having to, feel like you've got to sell yourself before you've earned the right to ask any questions. So personal brand is really important for two reasons. 75% of the time people check us out. We want to set an agenda, build trust, establish value early online rather than wait face-to-face. And the other reason is we can actually attract leads, right, by attracting and engaging people through the content that we publish.
Fantastic. And I think it's really important, especially again for this professional services market that relies so much on referrals from past clients or from professional colleagues, that even with a referral, people then want to check you out online. So in many ways, this is like a hygiene step. People want to make sure it's safe, that it's okay to work with you, and that just sets their mind at rest. And it's very much just about ticking the box. So in many ways, just having your LinkedIn profile doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be more than adequate, that it addresses those concerns. People feel safe and secure, and then we'll go forward. And if it's been a referral, then you'll have all that extra trust that comes with that, but it's been backed up, and they can see why someone has recommended you. So if someone says, oh, you should talk to Tony, he's a great salesperson, he's a great speaker about the topic of sales, and then I go to your LinkedIn profile and all that's confirmed and more, then I can rest very easy and know I've been referred to the right person.
Yes, yeah, I agree 100%.
Fantastic. And so with the LinkedIn blog posts, that's a really important new development on LinkedIn over the last couple of years. One of the challenges that I hear from people is that they're not getting the viewership of their LinkedIn publisher posts that they used to. What's been your experience there, Tony?
Yeah, my experience is the same. So basically what's happened is LinkedIn is just taking off and becoming incredibly popular. Obviously, LinkedIn was purchased recently by Microsoft for over $12,000 million, more than $12 billion they've paid for LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is incredibly popular. The reality is we need to earn followers. It was much easier to generate following 6 months, 18 months ago. Well, about 18 months ago is when they first made publishing available beyond just a select few. But now there's about 1.2 million LinkedIn members that actively publish original content inside LinkedIn. So there's a couple of tips I'm happy to really give people from my own experience. So I've had an individual post have up to 250,000 reads. And again, 65,000 followers, and I published 300 blog posts in just over 18 months inside LinkedIn. So I've done a lot of A and B testing of lots of different strategies. So the conventional wisdom when you do a LinkedIn blog post is you want to go for somewhere between 600 and 1,200 words is really my view. Some people will say you can go as low as 400, but I've had blog posts I've published that are well over 2,000 words that have done incredibly well. The main thing is you've got to focus on quality content. Do not publish rubbish. It's got to be good content. So 600 to 1,200 words. You want to make sure that you've got an image in the post that grabs someone's attention. And if anybody has a look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see an example of how I publish posts, and I've got a number of posts in there that explain everything I'm about to say now. So you can go and have a look at that, including a post about how to build a strong personal brand that we talked about a few minutes ago. So you want to have a really good image that attracts attention. You want to have a headline that actually grabs someone's attention. Things that have lists, so the 5 things, the 7 things, the 3 things, for whatever reason, tend to get better readership. You want to have 7 to 12 images embedded inside the post. Bullet points work well. And the other thing that's important too is whenever you write, always think about who's my audience, what's my main point, why is it important, and what do I want them to do about it? Now, the thing that's critical is in answering the question, what do I want them to do about it? You mustn't sell to people in social. The biggest turn off, the biggest thing that will damage your brand and damage following is if you push aggressively at people and try and sell. So if every single post you publish says, well, of course, the reason I know this is because of my wonderful methodology or intellectual property, click here, buy this, go to my website. If all of that's too overt, you'll certainly damage following. But think about what you want people to do. And then at the bottom, when you publish a post, you get the opportunity to publish 3 pieces of metadata tagging. So you can have 3 different tags. Now, they're predefined tags by LinkedIn, but if you started to type in a word, so consulting or professional services, you'll see what the choices are that come up. So if your headline matches the tagging, so if you had, for example, the 7 sins of professional services, and then at the bottom in the tagging, you had professional services consulting, professional services marketing, professional services strategy, if they were metadata tagging terms that were available, then you've got a post that matches. Now, the way the LinkedIn platform works is there are real human beings. There's LinkedIn editors. I think most of them are based in either New York or San Francisco, and they monitor LinkedIn's pulse channels. So you may hear the LinkedIn publishing platform described as Pulse. It's not LinkedIn Pulse, it's LinkedIn Publisher. So LinkedIn Publisher is the platform that we publish blogs in, but they have Pulse channels. And again, I've got a LinkedIn post that describes where all of these channels are. There's a link to go and have a look at them. But for example, they'll have a LinkedIn channel on innovation, for example. So if you want to get picked up by that Pulse channel, you'd want to have innovation in your title, innovation in your tagging, and have an image that would be interesting to someone that cares about innovation. And LinkedIn have an algorithm that starts to pick up posts, and that algorithm then pushes it to the editors, and they manually decide what they'll push into these Pulse streams. So if you want high readership, you've got to get into a Pulse stream, is really important. Now, the other thing I'll share is that if you want the algorithm to pick up something you publish, the amount of times that it's, in essence, liked and shared and commented on in the first 12 hours of being published has a significant impact. So it's not dissimilar to Facebook in that regard. So when people get frustrated that they're not getting the amount of readership that they think their posts deserve, they need to think about a publishing strategy. We talked before about the strategy for publishing a book. You need a strategy behind what you do with publishing posts. So I often say to people, don't just get busy in social. It's very easy to be the busy fool and create a whole lot of noise that does nothing for you at all. You need a strategy behind what you do. And that's why David Mihm Scott's book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, is so good. That helped me start to build my strategy, as did Michael Hyatt's book Platform. And I really thought about, where is my market? So for me, and I'd argue for most of the people listening to this, our market is in LinkedIn. That's everybody we want to get to is typically in LinkedIn. So we need a nuanced strategy for using LinkedIn well, both from a branding point of view, establishing an agenda point of view, and then an attract and engage with publishing point of view. So it's a much deeper topic, but that's a little bit of an overview.
That's fantastic. There's a few tips in there I hadn't heard before. I was aware of sort of the editorial board, but the Pulse channels was something I wasn't aware of. Can you tell us anything about the editorial calendar? I understand there's sort of content themes that they cycle through, and that if you align with those, you'll do better as well.
Yeah, so LinkedIn actually invited me to be an author. So I've been in their author program for some time. So that absolutely is true, but they don't publish that calendar out. So it's pretty hard for people to actually know what that is and how to write for it. The thing I believe is, think more in terms of your audience. It's all about your audience in your target market. So if you're a professional services person, doing consulting and services in the accounts payable and financial area of large enterprises, you'd be thinking about, okay, so my audience is the CFO. I'm targeting these kinds of vertical industries. What is it that they care about? So what are the topics they care about? And then who are the people that they would follow in social? I need to get myself connected to those people. I need to start sharing that content through LinkedIn updates, and then also publish my own original posts with my own content. so that my market start to see me as a content aggregator. Basically, if they feel they're really busy and they don't have time to go looking in social everywhere, they think, well, at least if I follow Dallas, he aggregates a whole lot of great content from others.
Fantastic. And thinking of your own publishing, one of the questions people often ask about LinkedIn Publisher is, should I republish content from my website, or can I republish content from my LinkedIn post to another location? They're concerned about duplicate content issues. You've explored this and come to a decision in your own journey. So could you share what you did first and what you do now?
So 18 months ago, I decided to stop blogging on my website altogether, primarily because I didn't want the work of posting in two places at one time, but I also did not want to suffer from the duplicate content problem. Now, the duplicate content issue is not as big a problem as people think it is. I'll talk about that in a moment. But my main driver was go and be where my audience is. And I'll just give you an example of the power of this. I don't know whether you remember that Qantas A380 Airbus flight out of Singapore, QF32, a couple of years ago, where one of the Rolls-Royce engines exploded. And they managed to get the plane back on the ground in Singapore safely. But I used to be a pilot, so I found all of that interesting. But Captain Richard de Crespigny, who was the command pilot of that flight, lives in Sydney. But the thing that fascinated me was when they got that plane back on the ground, he went into the, I think it was the business class and first class lounges, and he spoke to all of the passengers. His co-pilot, Matt, went and spoke with all of the economy passengers. But what Richard de Crespigny did is he said to them that when you fly Qantas, you're flying with a premium airline, and you have every right to expect a much better level of service, a much better experience. And he said, right now, there's 1,000 Qantas employees that are all rallying to find you hotel rooms, we're going to try and get your bags, we're going to give you vouchers to buy toiletries and clothing because you need to stay overnight. But he said to people, I want you to get your phone out now, or get a pen and paper. I'm going to give you my mobile phone number. Now, he gave every passenger his mobile phone number. And he said, if Qantas doesn't treat you the way that you believe you deserve to be treated, flying on us as a premium airline, I want you to call me. Now, the interesting thing is that not one person phoned him. But for me, I just thought this was a great example of someone representing the brand of their employer, jumping into marketing and brand representative mode, even though it's technically not their job. And I wrote a case study about all of this, and I thought it was a really good white paper. I put it up on my website, and in about a 15-month period, I had less than 100 downloads or reads of that white paper. Now, when I implemented the strategy 18 months ago, one of the early posts that I put up was I repurposed that white paper as a blog post in LinkedIn, and it's had about 250,000 reads in LinkedIn, right? And thousands of shares, and it's just been incredible. But that's the power of, rather than expecting people to come and find you on your little no-name, nondescript website, because there's so many websites out there, so much noise, go and be where your market is. So I decided to go build audience following in LinkedIn with a strategy of always bringing people back to my website later. So just in the last month, I've changed platforms. I used to be on an older platform called Drupal for my website, and I've changed to a product called Squarespace. It's quite similar to WordPress in that it's designed for blogging. So I created a tonyhughes.com.au website, and my sales methodology website is rsvpselling.com website, and they're both built on blog platforms. And I'm now duplicating my older content onto my websites, and in a way that you can search for content. So I've got over 300 posts. So if you want to search on a particular topic, you can't really do that in LinkedIn. You've just got to scroll through having a look. So I'm indexing all of those posts now on my website. So it's a place where people can easily find content about a particular subject.
Terrific, Tony, and that's a great answer. And as you mentioned, the duplicate content issue really isn't as bad as people worry about, and you can always put a link back to your site. Do you have any suggestions of publishing on LinkedIn first and then later to your website?
Yeah, so in my view, don't be paranoid about the duplicate content, but make sure there's about a 90-day gap. So if you're going to publish on one platform before the other, just make sure there's a 90-day gap, and also make sure that you cross-link those two pieces of content together. And that way the Google algorithm will see that you're not trying to game the system and trick Google. You're open about the fact that this is a duplicate of what was published, and both of these are you. Because the reason the Google algorithm publishes duplicate content is it does it because it's trying to stop marketers who are trying to game the Google algorithm by putting up lots of different sites, all with exactly the same content. So if it's obvious that you're linking to each other, that problem tends to go away.
For sure. And the duplicate content penalty is a little misnamed. It's really a lack of credit rather than a penalty, even in the worst case scenario. So it shouldn't slow people down too much. But I just thought I'd pull up your website on the screen here too, Tony, so people can see. So this is tonyhughes.com.au, and I've clicked through to the leadership blog.
Yeah.
And as I've heard you mention before, the big advantage of moving to your own platform is that you can manage and organize the content how you want. So you can make it easy for people to find what they want, or find, you know, the articles that you want to get out there, most of all, which is really hard to achieve in LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually got a search bar on the LinkedIn blog, sorry, on the blog on my own website, so that people can actually search. Yeah.
Great. And while we're here, I'll just check out the RSVP selling website, and there are a ton of sales resources and a really good quiz which I did the other day on your B2B selling readiness as well. So I really encourage people to check out rsvpselling.com and tonyhughes.com.au.
Thank you.
And one of the things that put you on the map really with your sales work and as a sales trainer and expert on sales leadership is your book, the Joshua Principle. Can you tell us a bit about your book?
Yeah, so I think everyone's got a book in them, and I'm, you know, I have a huge amount of respect for anybody who just manages to finish writing a book, let alone get it published, right? So it's a huge feat to get one done. So I think anyone who is a consultant aspiring to leadership should probably do a book. They're not easy to write. I went through a journey myself in publishing my book where I got it about 40% done, got frustrated with the process, stopped for about 18 months, dusted it off and started reading it again after that time, and just really didn't like what I was writing. It was just like all of the other books out there. What I decided to do was to, instead of writing a book that was more like a textbook, I decided to tell a great true story. So the book I published is written as a novel. It's really a father and son story, but about a sales guy who's about to get fired, who finds a mentor and gets coached both in his personal life and also on how to run large, complex, strategic sales. And yeah, it's in its 6th printing. It's had incredible endorsements from people like Professor Neil Rackham and a whole pile of other people. So it's been really great.
That's fantastic. And what motivated you to write the sort of well, the novel version? I was going to say fiction, but it's partly based on a true story. I understand it's a much harder book to write than the, you know, his 10 steps to boosting your sales.
Yeah. and again, I just encourage people, if you're going to publish a book, don't publish something that's rubbish. Really take the time to publish something you're truly proud of. I think there's a lot of people out there that claim to provide frameworks and methodologies to rapidly sort of pump out a book, right? So, but I think if you're going to do one, it's you know, it's worth doing well. The reason I adopted that format is that people learn through one of two means. They learn through either repetition or they learn through emotional impact. So I decided to tell an emotionally powerful story that people really couldn't forget. You know, I had one gentleman who's I won't say who he is because it's an embarrassing story for him, but he was the managing director of quite a large company, and he's on a flight coming back from Singapore to Sydney, and he was reading the last chapter of the book, the sort of culmination of the story, and he was crying so much that the flight staff on the aeroplane kept asking him whether he was okay. So it's not the kind of book you read on the bus. Well, so certainly not the last chapter is what you read on the bus. But the reason I did that is people remember the story and they therefore remember the lessons. And what I wanted was an intuitive framework that people could basically execute on the back of a napkin in a coffee shop when they're trying to manage a complex opportunity that they're wanting to win.
Fantastic. And it really is a great introduction to this sort of both the newer style of selling, but also to complex sales versus transactional sales. And, you know, in many ways, what we're seeing with disruption of various industries, including sales and professional services, is that we're seeing a split into the low value commodity work, which people are expecting to be fast, easy and cheap, and the higher end work, which does require an expert and people are more prepared to pay for. So you've pretty much got to pick where you want to put your energy and decide to be chasing the numbers in a race to the bottom, or focusing on high value transactions that leverage your unique skills or gifts.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with that.
Terrific. Now, we're really focusing on building your profile here. Tell us a bit about how important the book has been for your profile and how that ties into your online activities, because a lot of people would think the book is sort of a, you know, it's a very traditional approach. You know, it's sort of an approach that's been around for 100 years as a way to build your business, and longer, of course, but the social media thing is very new. How do they work together?
So I actually think that anybody building their brand in the professional services arena should really focus on blogging before they think about a book. So the really good thing about a blog is people don't expect a blog to be a perfectly edited piece of work. You're really sharing your thoughts, right? So you're ideating your ideas in blogs. Now, you do need to proofread blogs to make sure they're of a certain standard, but they don't need to be the standard of a book. So I would really encourage people to start blogging about their ideas, and through the process of blogging over a 12-month period, you'll really start to refine and hone your ideas to the point where you can then get it into a book. So now, a book is not just a collection of blogs at all, but blogging is a great way of exercising that muscle and becoming good at writing. Very few people are good at writing. I'm not naturally good at it. It's actually, you know, really hard work for me to write well. It doesn't just naturally flow, but I think if you get the discipline of basically writing or blogging every day, even every week initially, just get one blog post out a week. But make sure it's all about your clients and their world, not really about yourself. And that's where you get resonance with the market that you're approaching. So use blogging as a way of getting good at writing, and then use blogging as a way of refining your ideas that you would then eventually put into a book. You know, and then just set the goal and just get it done. It's very affordable to self-publish today. And obviously with ebooks, so there's lots of really good platforms that enable you to do book publishing really, really well, rather than go to a publisher. And then you can have that book as an ebook on your website and all of the other things. So I think a book is a good credibility piece, but I believe that blogging is actually far more powerful commercially.
Okay, that's really interesting. And I heard in another interview with you that you said you didn't want to just write any book, and that this book took a lot longer to create than you expected. So in many ways, blogging sort of bridges the gap and lets you be producing content and, you know, seeing some quick wins rather than spending 3 years locked in your basement writing a book that might never see the light of day.
It's true, and that book I've published actually took me 4 years to write, and 2 editors. The initial version I thought I was happy with was 120,000 words, and we got it down to about 87,000 words. So just that process is long and difficult as well. But you've really got to be committed to writing a book. But again, my big thing is, if you're going to do it, make sure that you write a good one.
Fantastic. And I know I've been working on a book for a few years myself, and at first I thought I had some good ideas, but when I got them down on paper, I thought, look, this is actually pretty similar to things that are already out there. Do we really need more of this? So it took me time to develop my own IP and approach, and test that more thoroughly before I was confident and could zone in on something that I could offer a unique perspective on.
Wow, that's exactly my journey. When I got frustrated, put it down, went back a year and a half later and started reading, I just thought the same thing that you did. I thought, wow, this is just like all the other stuff out there.
Fantastic. So that sort of covers why we should create original content. Do you have any tips you want to leave us with, or things to avoid doing when we're building our personal brand or using LinkedIn to help us drive sales in our business?
Yeah, so just some of the obvious things. So never plagiarize, never breach copyright. So when you have your main image in your LinkedIn blog posts or on blog posts on your own website, so that main headline image that you use, make sure you go to one of the websites that provides common use license images. So there's websites like Flickr, flickr.com, and there's a bunch of other websites as well. And when you look at images, just have a look at the type of license associated with the image. You want a common use license, and what that means is you can use the image with attribution. So if you have a look at my LinkedIn profile, just go to the Tony Hughes LinkedIn profile. Any of my posts, if you just hover your mouse up in the top left edge of the main image, you'll see that it says Flickr, and then it attributes source. So don't breach copyright, don't plagiarize, and the other thing is don't go negative. So one of the things you see in Twitter, for example, is it just becomes a bit of a sewer of negativity with people when they talk about social issues, and people can be negative in business. Facebook is slightly more positive, and LinkedIn I regard as very professional. So LinkedIn is a well-moderated environment. If people are either being nasty or being trolls, it's very easy to completely disconnect from those people. You can report them on platforms like LinkedIn. But, by all means, be provocative and be controversial, but always stay positive are really my main tips.
Terrific. Well, I'll just share the screen to show people those recommendations. I'll also just show how to do a Google image search for safe images to use. So if we type in a Google search term such as sales and then go to select images here, so I do an image search, you can then click on search tools and you can modify your search by usage rights. So you can say labeled for non-commercial reuse or labeled for non-commercial reuse with modifications. So that's sort of a bit of a meta way to search lots of things, including Flickr and other websites that offer common usage. And let's go and check out Tony's profile. While I'm here, Tony, I might just talk through a couple of things. So what you were saying in summary is that your profile needs to be almost a billboard for you as a product or a service provider, and so it should read almost like an ad or a billboard and say what you can do for who. And if we scroll down to your LinkedIn posts here, it's great if they're on topic for what people are expecting to find from you. So if I've been introduced to Tony as someone who's an expert on sales, then these posts very much reinforce that message. And we've got a bit of social proof here with your 65,922 followers today. And then in your description, you follow your own advice with those paragraphs about the value you provide, the values that drive you, and rather than it being a description of your work history or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and with those 3 blog posts that people can see there, there's a little button that says "See More." That's when it expands out, and you can see the sort of 300. But if you hover over one of the banner images of maybe the most recent post I just published this morning, so this one is management, the weak link, and the revenue chain. You'll actually, sorry, it's just at the bottom of the image. Sorry, they've changed the layout. But yeah, you can see where I just attribute source.
Terrific. So yeah, that's a great tip. And actually something you mentioned was the number of images you use in a post. So 7 to 11, was it? Yeah.
So you want to use 6 to 7 images, wherever you possibly can. So you can see I've just embedded some images in here. Right at the top there, you can see I've also embedded a YouTube video. So the LinkedIn publisher platform is really elegant. So you can embed YouTube videos as well. And the thing in life is that we see what we're looking for. If you decide that, I am going to start to publish content as a way of attracting my market and providing value for them, you'll be committed to continuous learning. And as you're looking and reviewing information every day, whether on the train or the bus or waiting at an airport, when you find things, you can use simple tools like Buffer to simply click a button and load it into cached content that'll get published automatically for you in that updates facility within LinkedIn, and also out to your business Facebook page and Twitter, and also Google Plus, which helps with search with search engine optimization, so that you come up in rankings. But if you're looking for content, you'll see it everywhere, and you'll think, wow, here's a really good video I just found on YouTube. I could write a bit of commentary around all of this and then publish it. And what you've got now is a multimedia blog post that's got some commentary, a video they can look at, some interesting images, and in essence make it snackable for people, so they can just easily have a browse, have a look at a video. They get both informed and entertained. That's really the approach that you should be taking. Think like a magazine publisher, and don't just think LinkedIn. Also think about YouTube. YouTube is massively powerful, and it's the second most popular search platform in the world as well. I know for myself, when I'm looking at solving problems, I've actually had a blocked tear duct in my left eye for a long time. That's just annoying me, and I was thinking, how do I go and get this fixed? And I jumped onto Google, but then into YouTube, and just did a whole heap of research, and I found an eye clinic that's near where I live that I'm going to go and see. But again, my buyer's journey just all started online. It didn't start with me going and seeing a GP, but YouTube was one of the places I went and searched to try and find information.
Absolutely, and that really is the shift in how people search for, choose, and buy our products and services that we need to take into account. I might just share this the screenshot of doing buffer as well. It's one of my favorite tools. So I've got a little app that creates a buffer share over images. It's a browser plugin, but otherwise I could just type this link into buffer. So buffer then just hooks up to my social networks. I really like using the power scheduler, which lets you sort of choose when you want to post to specific networks. So you can see very easily, having clicked on that image, it brings up a preview of the post I'll be publishing to Twitter, Google Plus, and other things. And for my own content, I would push it out to all my networks and then repeat it on Twitter every few days as well with a new LinkedIn post. So it's a great way to syndicate your content to lots of social sites. And as you said, when you first publish that LinkedIn post, the LinkedIn algorithm is looking for activity on that post within the first 12 to 24 hours. And if it's hot, it'll get pushed up to the top, just like in Facebook. So if you publish something, you want to be then sending it out to your email list, sending it out to your social media profiles, asking friends to share it if it's really important. For example, if you're putting on an event or doing a build-up for a launch, then getting some social support from your network can really help. So they're great tips to improve your visibility and reach on LinkedIn. Well, Tony, we've talked for heaps of time, and we could go on, but I'm conscious of a time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this incredible journey you've had with LinkedIn and building your profile. If people want to know more about what you do, what sort of services do you offer? Do you have training programs? I know you do keynote speaking and people can buy your book. What are the ways that people can work with you if they want to learn more?
Yes, so my typical market is really business to business sales organizations. So I really help sales teams modernize the way that they go to market through building strong personal brands, increasing the reach and efficiency in how they're trying to go and build pipeline, and then manage big complex opportunities. And I also do a lot of keynote speaking. So last month I was speaking at a big international conference in London. So anybody wanting to modernize the way that they and their sales teams sell, if they want to go and fix the revenue problem inside their business, that's really what I focus on. So people can find me in LinkedIn, obviously. So Tony Hughes in LinkedIn, or at my speaker website, tonyhughes.com.au, or at rsvpselling.com.
Fantastic. And are there, I've just done that sales readiness quiz, which was fantastic. Are there any other downloads or anything people should check out on your websites?
Yeah, I've got a whole pile of free content. I've got white papers, but really everything I know, I publish in blog posts. So jumping into my LinkedIn profile and then clicking that see more button, and then you'll see approximately 300 posts. You can just sort of browse that, but basically anything people want to know about complex selling, leadership, social selling. I know that's a crazy term, social selling, but leveraging social platforms to generate revenue in a far better way. I've got lots and lots of content about that. How to publish blog posts, insights about the LinkedIn algorithm, things on personal brand. I've got lots of content there, so people don't need to pay me any money to get that. They can just go and get all of that content for free.
Fantastic. So the first action step for people is to go and follow you on LinkedIn and make sure they're getting all your recent posts, and really look forward to seeing what's to come and seeing your journey. Thanks again, Tony, and really fantastic to have you on the show. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.